So, well, I guess in the MTC, so I live in Orem, so going to Provo, I was like, this is no big deal. And I wasn't homesick or anything. I just kind of felt like everyone at MTC said, don't compare this to EFY, because it's not EFY. But to me, it really felt like 2 weeks of just like spending time with other good friends and learning about the gospel. And obviously it was really hard, and we were tired, and we would fall asleep a lot. It was so fun, because you really just, the people in your district at the MTC become your best friends. The elders and sisters, you just feel like you knew them before, and you're all excited because all of you are about to embark on this journey, and you're all really nervous, and then you're all like, I'm just ready to be there. And so arriving in West Virginia, well, we hop on the bus to go to the airport, and we drove past my neighborhood, and I was like, oh, now I'm really going, like, I'm really gone. I'm not going to see that for a while. And so that was kind of fun, and the airplane was fun. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, all that good stuff. And so arriving in West Virginia, we took a connecting flight to Georgia and then to West Virginia. And as we got in the plane in Georgia to go to West Virginia, it was this tiny, tiny little plane that looked like we might die because it was so small and old, and the pilot was probably in his 90s. And we were all like, oh my gosh, we're going to die. And it was shaky and kind of windy, and it was the middle of summer, and so it was pretty warm. But I remember it was like an hour flight from Georgia or something. And as the pilot was like, all right, we're about to land, or whatever he says. And we all look out the windows, and we see nothing but these green, like, balls of trees. We thought, there's no airport. We're going to fall right into the woods. And we're getting closer and closer to the ground, and we all think that we're just crashing and dying. And all of a sudden, this airport comes out of nowhere. Then it's tiny, the smallest airport I've ever seen. Just the one runway. And really, it's like you look like you're going to dive right into the trees. And sorry, I'm moving too much. And then you jump right on there. And it's just covered in green, and you think you're in the Amazon or something, because there's so many leaves and flowers and grass, and there's mountains, but they're obviously not as high as in Utah, but I think sometimes they can be more beautiful. And so arriving at the mission field was kind of fun. Our mission president, he had just gotten there 2 weeks prior, and so it was kind of fun to just learn with him the ropes of the mission. But it was pretty terrifying to be, all of a sudden engulfed around all these missionaries who've been serving the Lord for so long, and we're just these little babies. And but we were really tired, and we were getting the orientation of the mission and showing PowerPoints of the different areas, and all of us were bobbing our heads and falling asleep. And something cool, our mission president gave us all our own book of, I think I have it with me. I'll show it. Get some show and tell here. And so we first got on the mission. We all got these cool Book of Mormons with our names on them. And so that was a really good, oh, I do belong here. This is something that is really awesome. And he encouraged us to do certain things with it in our studies. And so, yeah, entering, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness, but really fun. We got a call to our areas. They did this, big thing, and who your companion was. And my trainer wasn't there. She was in our area because it was a 7-hour drive. It was the farthest southeast part of the mission. And we took the transfer train, is what it's called. I thought it was a real train, but it's a bus. Just one of those 12-passenger vans. And you ride down with a bunch of other missionaries, and they hop off in their areas, and the different missionaries come on, and it's all pretty organized. And the whole way down, people ask, oh, who's your trainer? Oh, Sister Christensen. Oh, man, you've got the best trainer in the world. Where are you going? And I'd say, Lynchburg 3rd Ward. And they would all go, oh. And I was, what is that supposed to mean? Oh, this will be great. You'll be fine. And so a couple more missionaries did that. And I finally leaned over to her sister, and I was like, what's so bad about Lynchburg 3rd Ward? And she just kind of laughed, and she's like, well, do you remember in the presentation they showed a different couple areas about Liberty University? And I'm like, yeah, that's the Baptist BYU, right? She's like, yeah, that's Lynchburg. I'm like, no, because in the PowerPoint I had seen that area, and I thought that'd be so hard to be surrounded. It'd be like being a missionary of a different church in BYU, on campus. And so I was mortified, and everyone started telling these horrible stories of how mean people were and how hard of an area it was, and people don't baptize in that area, or it's hard to find investigators because no one wants to talk to you. And so it's pretty discouraging. I would encourage every missionary to not do that to anyone. I was grateful I had a good trainer, and she was like, no way, this is awesome. This is the best area you'll ever be in. And so she really helped me to gain more confidence, and we had a good time. It was tough. There were a lot of people who didn't particularly care for the missionaries or the Mormon church. But I definitely learned a lot. I learned how to love people. I thought I loved people before. But this first area helped me to really love people, even when they would not be very kind to you. So the West Virginia Charleston Mission covers 5 different pieces of 5 different states. It's just like a circle if you draw a line through most of West Virginia, except the northern and eastern panhandle. Those are part of the Pennsylvania, Maryland missions. So it's just the main center part is our mission, and then there's a sliver of Ohio on the east side. So I got to serve in Ohio for a little bit, which is kind of fun. And then it goes down, and we have a third of Kentucky, and then it swoops back down around, and then we have the third western part of Virginia, which where I spent most of my mission in, and then it scoops back up, and we have a piece of Maryland and Pennsylvania. I think that's 5, right? Yeah. And so it's pretty diverse, but all very similar. The languages, English and a lot of hillbilly. We always said we learned how to speak real good. But it is very, everyone's the same and everyone has the same culture, but as you get farther north in the mission, it's a little bit more. There's more people, bigger cities, not so much backwoodsy, but down in the southern part of West Virginia and Kentucky, it's a little bit very rural. As we were driving up the canyon last night, Provo Canyon, these roads are tiny, and I'm like, this is every road in West Virginia. Really curvy, mountainous, and yeah, there's lots of like I said, lots of trees earlier, lots of bugs. You'll find sprickets are very common. It's like a mix between a spider and a cricket. So I had a lot of companions who were terrified of spiders, and so they hated sprickets. And I did not like that. I didn't like stepping on them because they were gross. But they jump and they're, ugh. But you learn to love it. You learn to just embrace all the bug bites that you get. It's really humid in the summer. And that means winters are really, really cold too. My last week in the mission, it snowed 3 feet overnight. And I was so mad. Like, we're supposed to be teaching people, and everyone canceled. But it was really great because we got to do a lot of service and shoveled our neighbors out. And so it does get really cold. And actually right now in West Virginia, there's a lot of flooding going on. It's pretty tragic. There's been a lot of deaths. So I never witnessed anything that massive. But I know recently they've had a lot of flooding and tornadoes, which has been really hard for me to see. I wish I could be there. But I emailed my last companion, and she was saying that everything's fine, all the missionaries are fine, but it's just sad to see people lose so much, and they already don't have. But West Virginia is it's known for being one of the most impoverished states in the United States, and you see that a lot with people, and you'll be looking for an address, and it'll take you up on top of this hill. You'll go through a holler, and a holler is it's just really like a small canyon. It's like a little dirt road, mostly dirt roads, with mountains on both sides, or drops. And you'll drive up this holler all the way up, and you'll see like a trailer way, you have to pretty much hike up this mountain, or their driveways are this tall. And so sometimes we'd have to park the car and just walk a lot. It can get pretty muddy when it rains. When it rains, it really rains. And so that's always fun. Raincoats are always a good thing. Oh yeah, you gotta listen really carefully, especially talking to some of the older people. or those who have lived in West Virginia longer, you'll ask. I love to ask for directions from everyone because it's hilarious, and you get different directions every time, but it all makes sense. Like, you think that in no way am I going to find this place, but you follow it, and it's exact. We would ask, where can we find this person? Well, what street do they live on? And there's not really a grid system in West Virginia, maybe in some of the bigger cities a little bit, but even then the bigger cities are like the size of Orem. And so we would ask, how do we get to this place? Oh, you're going to take a left out by the church, and you're going to go down on the block. You get to the end of the block, you're going to see the church, and they just go on and on about, these different land points. They would never say, you're going to go about half a mile, and that half a mile would turn into 3 miles. And you're going to get to the top of this hill, and you're going to see a rock. When you get to the rock, you're going to turn left, and then you're going to go down another mile or two, and then you're going to get to the burned down church. And everyone knows where the burned down church is except for you and your companion, because you haven't lived there for 20 years. But you pass by and you see, ruins, and you think, I think that's probably the burned down church. So, although we didn't speak a different language, we often joke that instead of the gift of tongues, we had the gift of directions. So, yeah, it's fun. But mostly you can understand people. You just have to ask them to repeat it. A lot of hard experiences, but I think the hardest thing, like I said earlier, was just learning how to really love someone. In my first area, there were a lot of people who weren't kind. I was spit on once and chased down a block once, and I'm very a non-contentious person, and so when that sort of thing happened, I would just want to cry. Like, don't be mean to me. But I had an experience. My companion and I we tried this 40-day fast where we wrote a list of 10 things, 5 things we wanted to start doing and 5 things we wanted to stop doing. And so one of my lists was, stop forgetting to turn off my brights, because I was really bad at that. Or, stop, whatever it was that we were working on. And then my biggest one, though, was to gain a better relationship with Jesus Christ. And to learn to love everyone. And like I said, I thought I did. I thought I was always a kind, happy, loving person. But I learned very quickly when someone puts down Joseph Smith or the Book of Mormon or something that I, felt something about, it got me pretty upset. And so there was this man that we had been trying to see. He acted interested, but then he'd be really mean to us, and we'd say, okay, not today. And he lived around the corner from us, and so we'd always walk by, and he'd always be out mowing his lawn. And one day he just grilled us and yelled at us and gave us the good person test, which you'll probably get. People ask you, have you ever committed a sin? Oh, yeah, of course we're not perfect. Or have you ever committed adultery? And you're like, oh, it's kind of personal, but no, or whatever. And they'll ask all these questions, and essentially you'll get to the end of this quiz, and they'll say, oh, well, you're going to hell like everybody else. And it's just like, oh, man, it just gets really disheartening to be told that you're not going to make it. And it kind of swaps, you see the perspective change, because you hear of so many people of all faiths tell others that they're wrong, or that, you're going to a bad place, or you're just not worth it. And it kind of opens your eyes to realize that as a missionary and as a person, like, our goal should be to just lose all judgment, because I think it's one of our worst enemies. And so I think when you're able to do that, you're able to get to the level where you understand, no matter who this person is, what they've done, what they are doing, they're still your brother, they're still your sister, and you want them to be a part of something that you love so much. And so we had been praying, my companion and I, for 40 days to stop and start these things. This man we were seeing, and he was yelling at us again and telling us how wrong we are. And mostly I would just get impatient, or I'd start crying. I'd say, we need to go, sir. I just felt this immense love, and all I wanted to do was just hug him to death, and just bring him to church and let him to feel, because you always want to show them, I want to show you, come look at this, just come read this, come do this. But you really just need to help people to feel it. And in order to do that, you have to love them. And if you don't, that's, the Spirit can't be there, and it just makes things a lot harder. And so it was a really neat experience to be able to truly feel how Heavenly Father felt for this man. So when I was serving in Virginia, and I was served in this area for 6 months, and I had been there for about 5 at this point, and my companion and I were praying for a media referral, because those are always miracle stories, and we had seen a lot of success with them in the past. And so we were being exactly obedient, trying to do everything that we could, and we got a media referral. We got a text, and we jumped for joy, and so we go to contact it immediately, and he wasn't home. And so the next time we go, this boy answers. He doesn't have a shirt on, and he kind of looks at us and is like, "Oh, sorry, 1 second," and shuts the door. And we're like, "Man, we were so excited for this," but we keep waiting. And he comes back out, and he puts a shirt back on, and he goes, "Sorry, I just had to put a shirt on." He goes, "You guys actually came," and we're like, "What? This is real?" And so we get talking with him, and his name was Nate. We called him Nate the Great. And he was 19 at the time, I believe. And he had told us that he met with missionaries a couple years ago, just once or twice, and went to church with them. And he was like, "Yeah, that's cool." And he mentioned the missionary's name, and it was an elder that had gone home recently. And so we're like, "Cool, we know who he is." And so, but he had just kind of gone a different way. And as we were talking to him, we we're like, "So, what made you want to call us again? Why?" And his answer, I still hear it in his own words. He turned and looked at us, and he says, "There's no hope in Satan." And he continued to tell us that the past 3 years he had been part of a satanic cult. And, I'd never met anyone like that. And I've heard about those, and I knew that, it was not a very comforting thing to be a part of. But as he just shared his life story with us throughout the next little while, we learned so much from him, and how connected he was with the Lord and with the Spirit, even before he was baptized. And it was just remarkable, because we would go over and we would teach him, and after we'd leave, we'd come back, next day or so, and he would say, "Sorry, I'm so tired. I was just up all night watching General Conference." He's 19. And he was living with his girlfriend at the time, and she wasn't too religious because she'd been part of the satanic cult as well. And so she didn't particularly like us at first. And he would say, "Yeah, my girlfriend just got mad at me because I was reading my scriptures all night, and they're just so good." And he would come and tell us that he'd been watching General Conference addresses from the 1970s, and just was engulfing all of this, and he loved it so much, and he knew it's what he wanted. And I think it was the second or third lesson, he was like, "So when can I get baptized?" And we're like, "Whenever you want." And he had to overcome a few word of wisdom setbacks, but we came one day, we didn't even teach the word of wisdom yet, and he said, "Yeah, so last night I dumped all the rest of my alcohol down the drain, and my girlfriend was so mad at me, but I did it," because I said, "I'm not doing this anymore." I just felt like it wasn't good. And the hardest thing for him to overcome was smoking, but he did. We forgot to tell him that an e-cigarette was the same thing as smoking. And so, a couple weeks before his baptism, we see him walk down the block, and we're like, "Nate!" And as soon as we told him, he was like, "I am so sorry." And he was just so pure and innocent in many ways, but also he'd experienced a lot of other things. And so he wanted to get baptized on his birthday in October. So that's what we were planning for. It was about a month and a half away, but then he was like, "Actually, I want to get baptized sooner. When can we do that?" And so it was for the beginning of October, and transfers were the week before that, and so I got transferred. And I was really sad, and I was 9 hours away at this point, and so it was not feasible for time or anything to come down and see it, but just a powerhouse, Nate the Great, that's what we call him. So I think that's my favorite thing about, as hard as it is to come home, I love being able to call people from the mission and talk to them and text them and see how they're doing. And so, yeah. In the same area, it was another media referral, and as we were going to contact it, it was kind of in a part of town that we hadn't spent a lot of time in. It was a little more run down, and we knocked on the door, and this woman answered, and she was kind of like taken back, like, you came like another time. And so we're like, is this real? Like, is this a movie? Is this a Mormon message? And so she let us in, and we got talking to her, and she's from South Sudan and has lived in the States since she was her late teenage years. And when she was a teenager, the missionaries used to go over and see her mom when they were living in Northern Virginia. And she had taken the lessons and gone to church and was on date to be baptized. And then she just got scared and moved. She up and moved, didn't even tell the missionaries, and she just left and moved to the southern part of Virginia where we were. And she had lived there for a few years and had gotten into some trouble with her boyfriend and so forth, and ended up in jail for a little bit. And then was now on house arrest. And we taught a lot of people that were on house arrest. It's nice, they were always home. But going back to the point of losing all judgment and loving people, I loved teaching people who had been in jail. I loved teaching people who had made, different choices and experiences, because they were always so humble about everything, and that they understood so much. I feel like maybe not maturity is the right word, but it was just their spirits were always so strong. And so with our book, she became one of my best friends. And as we taught her again, she said she wanted it. She said, I know that I need this in my life, and I want my kids to have it. Her kids lived with her mother in Northern Virginia, and she was pregnant and was going to have a baby within the next couple months. And so as we taught her frequently, she would come to church every Sunday and wanted to be baptized so bad. We hadn't invited her to be baptized because with her being on house arrest, she had to wait so long until she could be baptized. And so we didn't want to, dishearten her. And so we just hadn't asked her yet, but we knew she wanted it. And one lesson we were reading in 2nd Nephi, when the angel or in 1st Nephi, when the angel is showing Nephi the meaning of Lehi's vision. And in the chapter, it says look so many times, and look with an exclamation point. And as we're reading this with her, every time I read that chapter, I always want to scream, look, because sometimes that's what the Spirit does to us. It's kind of like, hey, pay attention. And so we're like yelling, look, as we read it. And she was laughing and stuff. And so as we get to the next verse, she says, wait, I want to read this one. And she was not super confident in her English, but she spoke very well. And so she's reading it, and it came to pass, and the angel said, look! And she screamed, look! And it was so funny, and we're all laughing. So anyways, she was just a huge example to me of someone who loves the Lord and wants the best for herself and for her family, and willing to do anything to change. And this is more of a sad story. And I think the hardest part about being a missionary is seeing people with such great potential and love for the Lord, and then seeing them not be able to partake in it because of family members, because of other circumstances, like the law. She couldn't be baptized for so long, or had to wait, and it was really disheartening on her. And at one point, she had texted us saying, not to come over again. And we were completely shocked. This is our book. You've come to church every Sunday for 3 months. What's going on? And we went over to see, and her uncle wasn't too fond of the church or us. And it became a pretty dangerous situation for us and for her. And it was really hard to have someone that you love so much and then not be able to see them or talk to them or anything. And it was really hard for me. It's still really hard for me to think about it. But I also because of those experiences of, meeting these people that met with missionaries so long ago and are coming back, I have full faith that I'll find her again someday, or someone will, and that the Lord is watching out for her, because He's her child. We're all His children, and I gain so much comfort in the scriptures that speak about, every knee shall bow. One day everyone will know, and so no matter whether it's your family members or people you'll teach, I have the people will know. It's just a matter of when and how soon. But yeah, people like to eat squirrel out there, squirrel and possum, and a lot of deer. So I mostly ate a lot of deer. Like I don't think I had beef more than a few times. Well, I'm sure we don't have hamburgers, but when you had hamburgers, you would make deer hamburgers. And so I learned to like deer. At first, I didn't like it so much. We had someone cook us some deer once, and it was in a big old crock pot this big, and they cooked it for an hour and a half. Well, it's something you should be cooking like for 8 hours. And so we prayed, and we didn't get sick, thankfully. But it's actually really good. But I did try squirrel, and it was really more fun than anything. But squirrel gravy is something you gotta try. It's worth it. Probably fried chicken. I mean, people make it, and I ate a lot of biscuits and gravy. That's probably really the most favorite, is people would always make biscuits and gravy for breakfast or lunch or dinner. So, how important home teaching and visiting teaching are. Because in West Virginia, there's quite a few members, but there's a couple branches that I served in, and those branches, you'd have anywhere from 5 people show up at church on Sunday to 35, and sometimes they get higher than that. And then you look at the ward list though, and there's 200 other members that no one's even heard of in so long, and that even happens here in Utah. You come to find that we don't even know who these people are. But oftentimes we'd speak with like less active members who, say, oh, I'm not interested, or whatever it may be. And it all starts with, people just stopped coming. They just stopped visiting me. So I stopped going. And, in the moment you kind of think like, what are you thinking? But as you get to know these people and really come to love them and understand their whole story, you see that these, they needed that support. And that's why, you have the missionaries. But it goes so much further than that. We have home teaching, visiting teaching for a reason, not just to, make sure everyone's taken care of, but to really bond people and gain relationships and find those friends and family members that are supposed to be part of your life. And so I really just learned the importance of that, and seeing how just loving people is something that needs to happen. Besides how to talk to deer, because I tried to do that a lot. Didn't really work. Sometimes they would eat my apples. But I think, again, just back to the scriptures, is just really learning how to study and ponder them instead of just read and gain stories from them. Oftentimes our companionship studies would get pretty intense, just because it would just come to life in your studies and you'd want to act them out. So me and my companions sometimes would just, we'd be sharing what we learned, and we'd be jumping up on our desks or saying, and he did this, and so it was just fun to be so excited about that, about the scriptures. And I look back on that now and I'm like, gosh, I need to dance around for more people when I read the scriptures. But just, I don't know, the skill of appreciating something and just really kind of thinking. I used to lose focus a lot. The first couple months of my mission, I could not stare at the scriptures for more than 10 minutes because I would fall asleep, or I was, thinking about investigators. So I go, that's good, but I need to be thinking about what I can teach them instead. And so just really being able to kind of shut down and focus solely on what's most important. And so I think that's another skill or another thing that I learned, is that the gospel truly is the most important thing in our lives, and there are ways to incorporate it into every aspect of our lives. I love the scriptures, and especially my mission, you get to study them for an hour by yourself and then with your companion for another hour just studying the gospel. And so I learned to really love the scriptures, especially when we find other people who loved them. And once we were teaching a lesson to a member, he'd been baptized like 8 months prior, and so we were just having a good lesson with him and another member of the church. And so as we were teaching, we were sitting outside on their picnic table and just having a good old time. And this woman walks up to us, very, confident and walking quickly. And she said, "Are y'all Mormons?" I said, "We sure are." And she goes, "Oh, good, I am too." And she was so excited to find the Mormons. And so as we get to talk, she goes, "Can I join you? I want to study the Bible with you." And so she sits on down and she tells us her story. She's in her 40s and joined the church when she was a teenager, in her 20s, that period of time. She had had a few kids and lost them. Her name was Patty. And she had a few different mental disabilities, but she was so happy to find, the church. She says, "I haven't found the church in 10, 15 years. And so we got her contact information, and we would start seeing her pretty frequently, and got her a new set of scriptures, and she would just read the scriptures for hours every day. We'd walk by and she'd be sitting on her porch just reading the good word. And she loved it. She loved it so much. And she just was a great example to me in, you come away from something for so long, and then when you know something's good, you just embrace it and you go with it, and full-heartedly you just dive right in. And that's kind of what she did. And a lot of her friends, or the people she lived with, didn't appreciate the church and didn't think well of her for it. A lot of people didn't think well of her at all because they thought she was weird or this or that, or too tall. And she's beautiful in every way. And she's someone that I think of almost. I have a picture of her on my wall because I look at her every day. But she just really helped me to gain a better testimony of the joy that comes from reading the scriptures. There's Laura, and she was in my last area. She worked for the city as the emergency preparedness person, and the city manager was the stake president, and there was a couple other members of the church who worked for the city. It just was perfect. Everyone knew who we were, who the Mormons were, and they knew that they were really good people because of the stake president and his family. They had like 12 kids, and they all knew the Haas boys, and so it made things really nice. Like, "Oh, your preacher is the city manager." And we're like, "Yeah." And so anyways, Laura would always get her resources from the church websites to do her emergency preparedness stuff for the city and everything. And one day she realized one of her Facebook friends, who used to babysit for her, was Mormon. She was like, I didn't realize you were Mormon. Like, when did that happen? "Oh, a couple years ago I got baptized." And so they get talking, and she was like, "I want to know more. Like, tell me. Like, I love your resources. Like, you guys are doing something right." And so through that, this woman, Jerry, who's a member of the church, recently baptized, helped her set up with the missionaries. And it was the elders at that point. And then 2 weeks later is when we sisters moved in and the elders moved out. We just did a swap. And you just meet people all the time that that you knew before, that they're just family. And we got to teach her, and she just embraced everything we taught. She's like, "Yeah, I believe it. That's great. Yeah, of course. Yep, check, done. I know it's true." And she had to quit smoking, and that was something that was going to be hard for her, she thought. And so as we were teaching a lesson one day, we talked about the possibility of receiving a blessing. And so she asked for a blessing at work the next couple days, and from the stake president and Brother Brown, who also worked for the city, they pulled her into her office. And before that, though, it was the morning of. She had already told them she wanted one, and so she said, "Okay, I'm going to go outside, have one last smoke break." And as she walked outside, and as she said, as soon as she had a cigarette in her hand and was going to put it in her mouth, she got a text from Brother Brown that said, "We're ready now." And they weren't supposed to do it for another hour, so And so she just kind of looked at it and was like, well, and chucks it and then goes, and she didn't pick up another cigarette since. And so it just was really emotional to hear her tell us of the experience of, feeling such a powerful blessing and feeling the Spirit so strongly, and then just seeing her just soar and become so strong, and to help lift her family. And she was baptized a couple months later, and it was beautiful to just be able to see her glow. I mean, I think that's just my favorite thing, is just seeing people partake in the gospel, like eat of the fruit, and they just shine. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. Going back to playing in the mud, me and my companion got the newest car in the mission, because we were in this backwoodsy area at the time, and so it was a Chevy Equinox 2000. I think it was the 2014 at the time, and so the car coordinator, Elder Crandall, he said, "Now take care of this." We will, yes, we will do it. And so as we were looking for this member on the ward roster that no one had heard about in years, and we felt prompted to go find him, we were driving up there, and it had been raining and snowing recently, but it all melted away, which we forgot that when things melt, so does the road. And so we parked the car at the bottom of this holler, and we just started to walk, because we're determined to find this man. And we didn't realize, like, our GPSs, you're supposed to have a GPS when you go to West Virginia, but half the time it just leads you astray, or it will lead you to someone that you need to teach the gospel to. So that's happened before. But long story short, we had been walking on this dirt road for probably like a mile and a half of just, we're covered in mud. We look horrendous. Definitely we don't look like servants of the Lord, just covered in gunk. But we finally get to the top of this mountain, and there's this family that just lives at the top of a mountain, and we show up at the door, and we're covered in mud. We're like, "Do you know where so-and-so lives?" Like, "Oh, he hasn't lived here in, however long it was," or if he does, he lives down the hill and across the other holler and across that rock, and you get to the top of the hill, and then you get there and you're there. We're like, "Oh, okay." But the woman was nice enough to give us a ride home. She had a great big truck. They weren't particularly interested, but it was cool to see them, reach out and offer us a ride when so many people would just say, "Get walking, get off my lawn." So, congratulations, you're going to the best place on earth. And don't ever forget that, because you will never feel the same way about another place. I thought I was going to the West Indies, but West Virginia, way better. I'm sure the West Indies is great, but it's just be excited, and know that anywhere you go on your mission is going to be great, but especially in West Virginia. There's people that are waiting for you and your companion, your future companions, but most importantly, there's experiences for you to have to shape the rest of your life and for the rest of eternity. Bring a raincoat. You're going to feel like you're not ever prepared, and you kind of aren't until you get there. And you're still, at the end, you feel like, there's still so much. But it's enough, and you'll learn as you go. So just be excited, because it's the best. Press forward. It's the best thing you'll ever do. Up to this point in our lives. Obviously, I heard marriage is pretty cool, but I don't know. Weird. No. I guess any other advice would just be to learn to love your companion, learn to love each area, and just try to top it every time if you get transferred, because it's hard to leave. It's really hard to leave something that you love so much. And so just make it a goal to always love your next companion more, your next area more, and you will, and it will. Well, I mean, I guess if you do that, it makes it really hard to come home. So be cautious. No, I'm just joking. Just give it your whole heart and leave your heart there, because then that means you have to go back and get it.